Well, I've got Bessie is down here. Bessie is down. But really, this is just a demonstration of what to do if you have a coolant leak. So I noticed my coolant in the reservoir is low, right there on the right, and you know, I know it was full. We had a couple hot days, so I had a suspicion that I had a leak, and basically I looked around, you know, I didn't really see anything very apparent, but if you understand cooling systems, while it's cold, this system's under no pressure, but once you get up to operating temperature, this could be, you know, anywhere 10, 12, 15 psi. And so there's a couple ways you can do this. You could try to work on it cold, which, you know, a lot of times you can find the leak when it's cold, but sometimes you can't. Now this one, I'm not even going to mess around. I'm going to say I can't find the leak cold, although I do know where it is. And I'd come to this vehicle and I'd say, okay, I need to pressure test this. If you don't have a pressure tester, you can get it warm, and when you get it warm, it'll pressurize and you'll probably find the leak, but you also may burn yourself and have no skin and die. So not really practical for the professional. So I went ahead and gotten my coolant pressure tester here, and basically I'm going to go right to the radiator cap because, you know, this is where my pressure cap is. Sometimes the pressure cap's on the surge tank. This is a true overflow, and so for me it's the radiator. Now first thing I want to do, I guess I should say, I like to feel the cap. It's pretty cool. I squeeze the hose. The hose is pretty squishy, and so that indicates that when I pop this cap off, it's not going to be a geyser of hot coolant death. Okay, so I'm going to pop the cap off. I'm going to look in here. Looks a little bit low, and so if it's very low, what you'll want to do is fill this with coolant. If you're really just testing it, you could fill it with water, but you know, there's a whole discussion about coolant versus water. Water has several disadvantages. Water has no resistance to freeze. Water has no resistance to corrosion. Water has no resistance to electrolysis. Those are the main, you know, and arguably lubrication for the water pump itself. So those are the main reasons we don't use water. But if you're really just trying to find a leak and you top it off with water to find the leak and then you repair the leak, that's fine, because when you're done repairing the leak, you put coolant in. So for me, you know, mine's just a little bit low, so I'm going to work with it. Basically, there's a lot of different adapters on these pressure testers. You know, this one happens to be no adapter needed. You kind of are matching it up to the cap here. And, you know, this is the same connection with these little wings as this. There's other types that, you know, they thread in and whatnot. So you know, find your adapter. This little wing thing here, yeah, couple things. When it's down like that, it's you know, ready to contact the bottom of the radiator, and then that's like how you actually pump it. But when you're just trying to put it on, you kind of turn the wing so that it's lifted off, you know, and basically what that's done is kind of retract this little sealing ring. So I'm just gonna, you know, not have it like that. I'm gonna lift it up on the ramps. I'm just gonna install it. Okay, get my coordination on here. Install it, and then I'm going to push it so it's off the ramps, and now it's sealed. And then I'm going to pump it. Now, how much are we going to pump it to? There's some debate here, but the safe bet is this cap is rated to 13 psi. If your cap is 15 psi, then so be it. If your cap says something like 0.9, 1.0, or 1.1, that's in bar, and you'd use your Google Webs to calculate how many psi is that. In America, we use psi because we speak American. But in this case, 13 to 13 is very easy. So I'm looking at my tester, and I'm just going to go ahead and start pumping it. And ultimately, what I would try to do is I would just try to pressurize the system to no more than what it's rated for. So if it's rated for 13, you know, I'll probably go right for 13. But I'm going to tell you, because I already know where my leak is, as I pump it up just a little bit, I'm going to start to see some water flowing. And so I've pumped it just one time. It's got, shoot, almost no psi. If I pump it again, it'll come up a little bit. You know, with just a few psi, I'm already looking at a spray right here. So this leak, which is hard to see, we're going in upside down. This leak is not evident without pressure. Once I got pressure on there, it's starting to seep. It's puking, actually. It's literally spraying. It's all over the place. So now that I know where my leak is, let me go ahead and yank this sucker off of here because I'm making a mess. You know what? I could leave it on. I just basically relieve the pressure. So to relieve the pressure, you know, we'll kind of like lift it on the wings. You'll hear, and then I'm actually going to leave it installed and clamped on, because if I pull that hose off, my coolant's going to come leaking out like crazy. But if I have this on, that'll help kind of slow it. And I'm cheap and I'm going to use whatever coolant I need to, but I certainly don't, you know, care to use a lot of coolant that ran on the ground. So I'm going to try to slow the leak down. If you have this off completely, this is room for air to rush in behind it and the coolant will flow faster. So basically I see kind of what I got. Looking at that clamp, that's going to be a pain in the butt, so I ain't going to mess around. I'll come over here to my box, my mess of a garage until my shop is built. I'm going to go for one of these. Bingo. A nice hose clamp specific tool. And I'm gonna snake them down in there like so. I'm just gonna have it set on, and then I'll get the GoPro in there a little more closely. Even with this tool, it still takes a fair amount of coordination. And so I've got the clamp right on, you know, I got the tool right on the clamp, and then with this hand I'm gonna squeeze. Go ahead, lock it. I'm going to snake this, you know, little clamp back. I really want to inspect why this was leaking. I know it was leaking there, but it's kind of like, why? You know, there's nothing. The hose doesn't look swollen or ballooned. The clamp feels and looks healthy. So why do I have a leak here? And, okay, I've got my hose pulled off. Now I'm going to reach it up here to work a little better with it. I'm going to slide the hose clamp back out of the way. And then I'm just going to, matter of fact, I might just leave it on. Well, I see my issue here. Look at that. I got some hose damage. I know what that is. Normally, I would be looking for rubs, inspecting for things that might have hit, may have scraped, maybe the belt, a spinning pulley, an accessory, like, you know, some type of rub. Now this vehicle's pretty, well, it's kind of stock, but this hose and its location is totally stock. This is not an aftermarket intake. This is kind of weird, and where it was, nothing can touch that. Those little scratchy looking things, that's mouse teeth. So being that, I mean, you're looking at the surroundings, I'm in their territory, so they chewed my hose. I hate them. And yet, I'm just going to fix it. So, in reality, I would track down this hose from this end to wherever it goes. I can see where it goes. It goes kind of down in this valley, and I'd buy that hose. But, you know, I'm going to do something as a quick fix here. And I'm actually going to go ahead and trim right up to where that chew was. Carefully, right? So, there's my hose. And I'm going to see, you know, I've cut off 1.5 inches. I'm going to see if perhaps just cutting the end off is going to be all right. Maybe. It's possible. But if not, I'm going to have to go hunt down a hose. But if I'm going to hunt down a hose, this is my daily driver when I do drive, not on my motorcycle. And it would be in this. And this is going to be pretty darn difficult with the coolant puking out to go track a hose down. So I just slid it back on. I released the clamp tool, set it off to the side here. I'm just gonna take a good look here. It's interesting, this had a little plastic conduit, split conduit on it, like for protection. I may spin it around and make it so that the mouse can't chew. Again, there's plenty of slack here. I'm actually pretty happy with this. You know, there's quite a bit of slack, so I'm going to say that's probably going to be good. But because I don't want this to fail on me, what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and do another pressure test here. Now, if this pressure test holds reasonably, I'm going to go ahead and fill this up with coolant. I could do it now, But if it's caught a leak or leaks again, I don't really care to fill it with coolant 2 times. So basically what I've done, I've pumped it up. You can see I put it right on that line of 13. And at this time, there's a couple things. One, I'm very confident that service I just did is good. You can see, dry, right? And I can come and spray it with a hose and whatever. But what I'd recommend when doing a verification or just a pressure test in general, leave this on there. Go do what you got to do. Go do something. Start another car. Do another job. In this case, I'm at home. I don't have another car coming in. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get the hose and I'm going to hose all this junk down. I'm going to leave that pressure on there as long as I can, because if it has a small leak with a long period of time turns into a big puddle. And so it's easier to find the leaks when you leave it pressurized as long as possible. Now, some school of thought, you watch the pressure gauge for drops, and mine's on point. This is my own personal tool that I take good care of. However, I found a lot of these, even with a system that doesn't leak, the gauge will internally leak, and it'll kind of creep down. So you could watch this needle and see if the needle drops over time to indicate a leak, but I just wouldn't totally trust that. It's a good indicator and a good theory, but if the actual tool itself has a leak through it, it's going to indicate a leak in the car, but in reality it's going to be the tool. So, basically right now my advice would be clean this thing up, get it all, whatever you got to do, and then by the time all that work is done, re-inspect for leaks, recheck your pressure as just kind of a guide. If you see no leaks, go ahead and top the coolant off, and a road test would certainly be a good verification, because if there is another leak, it loses coolant, it overheats, it dies on the side of the road. That's an unhappy customer. Maybe a tow bill, maybe a blown engine. If it overheats so bad, they may warp and damage things. So this is a pretty serious high risk kind of a deal. I just happened to catch it, and so I didn't overheat mine. I only lost a little bit of coolant. But had I been 2 hours from home, I'm not really sure. I probably would have pulled over and had it towed, or I would have kept topping it off. So you want to be careful with coolant leaks. If it's a coolant leak, it will bite you in the butt. So there's your lesson today, people.